Hey guys, welcome to MasterGamingVR. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be going over my final thoughts after using this for a week or more. Uh, so I've already done sort of my first impressions after just a couple hours of playing with the headset, and I ended up devolving into a great big rant and tantrum, mostly about the whole Oculus experience more so than the headset. Ending up comparing, Oculus Home features with Steam VR features more so than looking at the headset and comparing it to other, more comparable headsets for its price point. And it was supposed to just be my first impressions and first thoughts looking at it, and then I was intending to do this more objective video. So that's what this is going to be. It's going to be more of a talking head video. uh, I didn't really want so much distraction in the background, so yes, we've got the green screen. I'm sure you guys will have a lot of fun with that. I don't have a inappropriate background, and I didn't want to have any green screen stuff back there. So just more of an intimate me talking with you guys sort of video. I've got 4 pages of notes here that we're going to go over. Some categories, just the general hardware features, a little bit of the software stuff towards the end, some of the issues that I encountered. But for the most part, I just want to go over the headset and the hardware today, just specifically the Rift S hardware. So let's get started with the thing you're going to be looking at the most, the lenses. So the Rift S allows for roughly a 1.5 centimeters of adjustment. So there is a button right under here that you can press, and it will adjust the headset here. You can't move the lenses independently. So there's the whole IPD issue where the lenses don't move. The lenses don't move in and out either. It is the entire display here that moves in relation to the halo. So if you wear glasses, then and you need the lenses farther away, you're likely going to end up with a looser fit up against your face, as well as you are likely going to have a much larger nose gap for light to seep through. I felt like I couldn't really get it right up against my face, and I usually feel that with the Halo designs. If you have glasses and you need it to be farther out, that may also be an issue. I couldn't ever get it anywhere really satisfactory. I always kept trying to push it farther, and it just wouldn't go farther. I'm not the biggest fan of the Halo designs to begin with, so I'm not really that surprised about it. It's one of the flaws of the Halo design that I prefer the more baseball cap style. So resolution and refresh rate, keeping with the lenses here, the S has a slightly higher resolution than the base Rift. The base Rift was 1200 by 1080, and the Rift S is 1280 by 1440, and that is one eye resolution. It's for the full resolution, you just double that first number. You take 1280 and turn that into, what is that, 2560 by 1440, and 2400 by 1080 is the numbers for both eyes. But I'm just comparing single eye resolution here. While this does reduce the screen door effect considerably, it's still not really on par with some of the standards of the premium headsets. So it's still not really in line with any of the premium headsets. It is sort of a mid-range headset, so we kind of know that. Smaller text is a bit blurry. For me personally, this means that when I am looking at stream chat when I'm streaming, it is much more difficult to read stream chat than it is in one of my other headsets. But still, much better than the PSVR. Definitely an improvement over the OG Rift. However, the refresh rate on this is 10 hertz less. It is an 80 hertz refresh rate over a 90 hertz refresh rate, which is the recommended refresh rate to not cause sim sickness in most people. So if you are someone who is more inclined to sim sickness, then this headset might lower that threshold for what you can tolerate. For the most part, you're not really going to notice those 10 frames. It's not going to be a huge deal. If you are like comparing it side by side with something that's 90 frames and something that's 80 frames, you'll likely be able to notice the difference. But if you're just grabbing this headset, and switching to it, and then you never look back at a 90 hertz, you're probably not necessarily going to notice any difference unless you're a really big frame rate snob. The 10 hertz isn't that big of a deal. My only concern with it is the potential for lowering that threshold of what people can tolerate without succumbing to sim sickness. And as this is more of an entry level, like my first headset, it seems like it's marketed towards people who don't have a VR headset. That this is going to be their first headset. That might be an issue since they don't necessarily know what their tolerance is, and it might end up making more people sick. So that's a questionable decision in my mind. We got a little bit of a better resolution, but then we took a hit to the frame rate. So overall, what you're going to see in this headset doesn't look better. It's a step up from the Rift, but it could have been considerably better. We could have gone with the same resolution as the Quest, which I believe is the 1440 by 1600, the same as the Vive Pro or the Samsung Odyssey. The Samsung Odyssey being a much closer price point than the Vive Pro at 500 versus 400. So the Odyssey has the inside-out tracking. It's a much more comparable headset, and it's got the 1440 by 1600 resolution that this one doesn't. This one being again 1280 by 1440. That's quite a bit of pixel density that you're losing, and that's again where that text becomes a bit blurry and why it was difficult for me to read stream chat. So it's better than the Rift, but not as good as it could have been there. God rays were, I believe, considerably better. It might be that I just didn't play anything with God rays. I played some Beat Saber. I played some some Orbis. I played some Township Tale. I played a variety of other miscellaneous titles like Robo Recall, a couple other things. I didn't really see any God rays. They were noticeably reduced. Nothing that stood out as being problematic. If you're looking for them, I'm sure you can find them. But for the most part, not much of an issue. Now we do need to talk about IPD while we are talking about the lenses. We can't leave that out of the discussion. The lack of any support for IPD outside the range of 58 to 72 might be a problem. There's only a software adjustment. We all have heard this debate and this flame war. I'm at 69.2, and it's not that bad for me. There's the sweet spot is still there. The biggest issue is not so much the IPD range, but whether or not the lenses will allow you to position the headset in that sweet spot so that you're not getting distortion from the lenses rather than the software IPD setting. Sorry. My ability to sit inside that at 69.2, I'm sort of kind of on the edge. I'm not extremely on the edge. I'm not 71.8 or something. I'm not way on that edge, but I'm not sitting pretty in the middle either. 69.2 is pretty close to the maximum, and I have a pretty decent sweet spot. So if you're in that IPD range, then you're probably fine. If you're outside of that IPD range, it might be better to look for another headset. I can't really make that determination since I don't have that IPD to tell you what it's going to be like. Maybe somebody who does have that larger or smaller IPD has done a review out there. I'm not aware of any, but the best that I can say is if you are in that outlier, find a VR arcade around you and take the 30, 40 hour and half minute, whatever drive out there to test it. I mean, it's worth, spending $30, $40 in gas to go out there and find, no, I can't deal with, this IPD restriction than it is to buy the headset and learn this is blurry as shit and it gives me a headache and it makes me nauseous and I can't deal with it. For me, it's working fine. I don't have any problems with the software IPD. I think that it would be better if it were mechanical, but that I do understand the argument that brings another point of failure, and there are plenty of points of failure here. Not so much with the hardware, but with the software. There's definitely room for improvement. But I'm not going to get on that tangent, at least not until the end. Audio. So, audio. There are these speakers right here on either side in the headset, as opposed to having the actual over-the-ear headphones that the previous Rift had. I see this as a downgrade in audio. I'm not a big fan of the headsets having audio to begin with. I would rather not pay for it. I'm going to use my headset regardless. A, because it just sounds better, and B, because I'm going to be recording. So I have zero use for the audio built into the headset. So full disclosure, I didn't test this. I didn't see what it sounds like. I have no desire to even know. It is another point of failure. It's another setting that I have to set. It's another thing that the software tries to alter that I need to go in and prevent. And sometimes, even though I've got it, everything set up to not change over, sometimes it does anyways. Sometimes it has a mind of its own, and I'm sitting there talking to you guys, and you're not hearing me on stream because it's not going through this mic. It's trying to go through the mic on the headset, or I can't hear game audio and I think something's wrong with the game because it's trying to be piped through these and I don't have those on. So it's just another point of frustration for me. But I say most of that to say that the next thing that I say is just hearsay, right? I don't have any actual experience with it. I have heard the audio quality is pretty garbage. It is not as good as the original Rift. Nobody that I've seen, no review that I have looked at has said the audio is good, or the audio is decent, or the audio is passable. They've said that the audio is pretty bad. That's something that might be able to be fixed with software in the future, but for right now, you're probably not going to want to use the audio here. There is an audio jack on the side. I'm not sure if that is also pretty bad or not, but I wouldn't use the speakers. I don't want to hear the real world anyways when I'm in VR. It's a point of immersion. I don't need to hear what's going on outside my room or what's going on outside, or hear the kids screaming as they're playing in the pool next door. I don't need to hear any of that. I want to be immersed in the world that I'm in. So I would much rather have a headset that didn't have built-in audio, that was a little bit cheaper, or that time and resource and effort was put towards something else like better resolution or better frame rates. I would much rather have that power spent elsewhere. I don't think it needs to be built into the headset. There are plenty of wireless headsets out there. VR enthusiasts, I believe, are likely going to be gaming enthusiasts who more than likely have a preferred and favorite wireless headset. So I don't see it as something necessary. I see it as something extra and not something that I want. So that's audio. Again, I can't really comment on it myself, as I don't experience it for all the reasons I just mentioned. Fit and comfort. Surprisingly, I'm not a huge fan of the Halo designs, as I said earlier, and one of the main reasons, aside from I can't get it as close to my face as I would like, for the PSVR, for example, puts a lot of pressure right here on my forehead, and I find it very uncomfortable, and I keep having to adjust it and relieve pressure and pull it off. That it puts everything right here, and eventually it starts to give me a bit of a headache, and I can only do so much in the PSVR before I start feeling uncomfortable. I was expecting that here because this is another Halo design. All the Halo designs so far have done it. The padding on the inside here, this padding is super nice though. It wraps from temple to temple, and it's soft, it's comfortable, it feels good. The padding around the back here is really, really comfortable as well. It would be nice if the faceplate here was not so difficult to pull off. If this was more Velcro or easily removable, because after a 2-hour session of Beat Saber, this is going to be nasty. This is going to be really nasty. I mean, how a sweaty VR mask feels, and if you're going to be gaming with your buddies and doing something intensive that's going to make you sweat, well, you better be really close friends because you're going to be sharing when that happens. And it's fairly easy to pop in and pop out, but not as easy as say the Vive's Velcro system. It's still a step up from OG Rift, because I don't think you could do this in OG Rift. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember being able to do this. And it pops back in, but it doesn't. There's not like a satisfying pop, so I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's in there right. I don't know. That's really the only like comfort or fit issue is this face mask here. It's still comfortable. It is going to give you a bit of an Oculus red ring, and nowhere near as bad as the original Rift. There's a little bit of red on my face after I get done with this, but again, it's a far cry from the original Rift's Oculus branding on your forehead. This guy right here, this button on the back, I would love to have seen this be different. I touched on this in the original video. Once you set it, there's no like quick release. So I demonstrated earlier in the previous video how the PSVR has that button that you can press and just you pull it out. This doesn't have that. So every time you need to put this back on, you've got to twist this. It's a small thing, it's a minor thing, it's a quality of life thing, but it's just a little feature that could have made it better. So you do a couple of quarter turns to pop this out, put it on your head, and then tighten it down. It could have been a little bit better if they'd had some sort of quick release, or if there was some stretchy part in here like on the original Rift, where you could pull it out and it had a little give. As it is right now, it's it's nothing horrible. It's just a little. It's a minor inconvenience, to be honest. It would have been a little bit nicer to have something else. Speaking with other people who have this and who have used this, I've noticed that there is and I did this too, there is a tendency to over tighten it, and it can become very uncomfortable if you over tighten it. You don't need to really crank down on this. There's a sweet spot, just like with the lenses. There's a sweet spot when you're adjusting the head strap. You want to get it nice and snug, but not so that it's like cutting off blood flow to your brain. That's gonna cause a problem. But other than that, I was really, really happy. I found this really comfortable, and a very good Halo design. This is where other headsets that want to use a Halo design should look and mimic some of the things that I've done here. The cable is plugged in right now, but it is reasonably long. I have a very wide and deep play space. This is I think a 20 by 20 foot room. Obviously, I've got some desks along the wall. I've got my printer station and the PC, my mini fridge over there. So it takes about 2.5, 3 feet that way, maybe 4 feet this way. So you can extrapolate like 17 by 16 foot play space. And from my computer, which sits right over there, probably about 6 feet this way from the wall. That cable will reach pretty much this entire room without issue. In the far back corners, it'll start to tug on my head a little bit, but for the most part, fairly happy with the cable. I would love to see a wireless option. A wireless option for this headset would make it stand out even more from all of the other inside out headsets. The super easy setup coupled with a wireless option would make this just a no-brainer. That would make this a reasonable upgrade to the OG Rift. If there was a wireless option for this, done. Go ahead, go upgrade now if there were wireless. There's not, as far as I know. TPcast may be working on something. I need to check into that. But if this were wireless, I would probably use it a little bit more often. So let's get into the controllers here. So this is the OG controller, and this is the new controller. For the most part, they're effectively the same. They have the same button layout, they have the same joystick, they have the same capacitive touch, the same Oculus button. All of it is pretty much the same, with the biggest difference obviously being the ring. The ring is on the top here so that when you're holding it out like this, the headset can see the ring, whereas on the old there was less tracking on the ring. This needed to be on the outside so that the cameras looking at you could pick it up, whereas the ring now needs to be on the inside so the cameras can pick it up. Biggest difference there. There are a few other things. The small size of these controllers. I've got fairly large hands, and these controllers feel very, very small in my hands. I grab around this and the controller just disappears. So it ends up being a little bit uncomfortable for me. So for example, if I'm playing a game where I don't want to be mashing the grip button, and I don't want to be mashing the trigger button, if those are tied to something like grab an object or toggle hold or grip to move or something like that. I think in Final Assault is the name of the game. You had to reach out, grip the world, and pull to move. So obviously I didn't want to be holding grip that entire time. So what I end up having to do is just with my ring and my pinky finger. That's the only reasonable space that I have to grab. And that gets really tiresome really quickly. It puts a lot of strain unnecessarily on these two very weak fingers. And there's not really a good place. So with the old controller, you had a great big faceplate here, and you could put your thumb here and hold on to it, and there were places where you could put your fingers to grip the controller and not be pressing any buttons. I don't feel like we have that here. Everywhere in this ring, there's a button. There's like, I can pull my thumb way back and hold here, but that's just super uncomfortable. So like when I'm playing Beat Saber and I'm flinging this around, I don't feel like there's a great place to grip up at the top, and it ends up becoming uncomfortable for me. So if you've got large hands like me, these tiny little controllers may make you feel like Will Smith. I feel like I'm about to break this damn thing. Or whatever he said, however that line goes in that movie. So tracking. Where this headset, as far as the inside out tracking headsets go, really shines. I was blown away by the inside out tracking. It is, for the most part, wonderfully done. I have nothing but praise for this headset when it comes to the inside-out tracking. I can take the controller and crank way the hell back here, and it will still recognize, as far back as my arm will go, like this hurts to do, it'll still track this. This is about where it stops tracking. And when it does stop tracking, it's not like it oh, okay, I have no idea where it is. Let me put the hand way back out here in front of you to some default location. No, it stops where it loses tracking exactly in that space. And as soon as it can see the controller again, then it picks up and starts tracking it again. So it's really, really well done. The only issues that we saw, and I demonstrated this in the first look, were when they were super close together, like this. So if you're dual wielding pistols or something and you're shooting at something, you might get a little drift. That was really the only time that I found any sort of tracking distortion. There have also been reports that if you get close to the headset, if you're too close to the cameras, it confuses the cameras, and then you get a little bit of drift there as well. So maybe when you're playing Creed, you might have some issues, or any of the other boxing games, but I can't really think of too many games where you've got to have your controller right up next to your headset that's not a fighting or a boxing game. So really, really super happy and really, really satisfied with the inside out tracking. One other caveat. If you are a huge Onward fan, for example, the datapad on your back may have issues with the Rift S. So you have to reach behind your back. All of a sudden, the headset can't see the controller, and it's going to stop right about here. So you're not far enough to the small of your back to grab the datapad. You're now out here, and you can't go any farther. You may have to contort your body a little bit to get the cameras to be able to see where the controller is. That could be fixed by a camera on the back of the headset, but we don't have that. It's going to be an issue in some games. Not a lot of games do it, but the games that do are going to have issues with the Rift S. A Township Tale, for example. If you watch any of my streams, one of the most recent ones, as of this recording, we ended up playing with the viewer K2 Cred, and K2 Cred was playing on a Rift S, and we saw him have the exact same frustrations that I thought might happen with the backpack. He was trying to, grab the backpack from behind his back or put the backpack behind his back, and as soon as he got to here, his head started to occlude the headset, and he wasn't able to place the backpack on his back. So he kept trying to do that and then dropping the backpack on the ground. And in A Township Tale, that backpack is your life's blood. That is everything that you own you're carrying in that backpack. It is super important that it goes on your back when it's supposed to go on your back. Same with his weapon when he was trying to put his weapon on his back. Eventually, he figured out kind of a trick to go more towards the shoulder and make sure that he was contorting his head so that the camera could see where his hand was, and hope that Township Tale didn't rotate him. I don't think it's going to be an issue the majority of the time, but when it is an issue, it's going to be a very significant game-breaking issue. The occlusion behind your head and behind your back, it's going to be a serious problem in some games, but I think the number of games is going to be slim to none, especially moving forward, while developers now have to think about if they're going to be supporting the Rift S and design around that occlusion limitation. So that's that. For the most part, I'm super in love with the inside-out tracking, and for me, I've hated all of the inside-out tracking that I've used prior to the Rift S. So that's saying a lot coming from me, that I'm saying the tracking here is really good. Let's see, did I have anything else? Oh, yes. So there is one other thing with the controllers. It's not quite tracking related, but it's close enough to be in here. And again, if you watch my streams, you probably know what's coming. The input lag. So I mostly saw this in Orbis VR when doing things like the Scoundrels trick shot or flick shot, or fishing. So anything where you need very precise where you need very precise button presses. There could be issues here. Anywhere from just a small fraction of a second, like was there a hesitation there? I couldn't really tell, to like a full half second where there's definitely an issue here. So when playing Onward, the scoundrel can curve their bullets, and to do that, you pull the trigger while you're going through an arcing motion. One of the things that I personally do is I do that with a charge shot. So to charge a bullet, you hold down the trigger. Okay, boom, 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 boom. Your charge shot is charged. You do the flick, the wrist flick, and you let go. So hold the trigger, hold the trigger, hold the trigger. Go, go, go. Let go at a very specific point because you have to aim that curved shot at something. It wasn't always registering the letting go exactly when I let go. So I would do my flick shot and let go and be like, okay, why isn't it shooting? Okay, why isn't it shooting? And then it would shoot, and it would go in a straight line, completely ignoring the flick shot that I did. While fishing, everybody knows how you fish. You pull the trigger back here, you cast, you let go out here, and it's a very fluid motion. Pull the trigger, fling, let go. Pull the trigger, fling, let go. What was happening was I was doing pull the trigger, fling, let go, and then it was triggering the let go after a brief pause. So instead of my line flying across the pond and me being able to reel it in and actually get something valuable out of that cast, it was basically just pull the trigger, fling, let go, wait a second, the lure drops straight down into the water. And I basically just lost one of my casts on that lure. Every time you cast a lure in Orbis, it loses 1 durability. You basically have 30 casts max per lure. So when 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 3 of those swings is being wasted, that's seriously game impacting. With the Scoundrel and the Trick Shot, that's where a large majority of your DPS comes into play. You get a huge damage buff from doing that trick shot, and when you don't do the trick shot, you lose a major amount of DPS, especially after this latest patch. So that input lag, it's possible that it can be fixed with software. I'm hoping that it can be fixed with software, because as of right now, I can't play Orbis with this headset because of that input lag. That input lag is killer. When you're playing something like Robo Recall and you're just spamming bullets and it doesn't really matter, you don't need to have precise button controls, or you're playing Beat Saber where it's just flick, 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 and you don't need button presses, perfectly fine. When you are super dependent on your button presses being to the millisecond accurate, there's some input lag here. Be aware that that's an issue as of, the first week of playing with these. That's an issue. So make sure you're looking at the date of this recording when I'm saying that, and don't just flame, oh, that was fixed ages ago. As of right now, still an issue. So that pretty much does it for the hardware side of things. The setup side of things was super simple and super straightforward the first time I did it. Plug in the DisplayPort, plug in the USB, and we're good to go. Install the Oculus software, and it was immediately recognized. It was the simplest Oculus setup that I'd ever had. My OG Rift was super picky about when it wanted to be recognized and when it didn't want to be recognized, and whether it saw the cameras or it didn't see the cameras. Just immediately recognized. All of the cameras on the Rift are picked up. Everything just worked for the first hour or so. I did have to reset it up multiple times. Out of the 6 days 6 days straight that I played with this, 4 times I was forced to reset the Guardian system and reset up everything. That was one of the main selling points why I bought this headset, was to not have to do that. So with the OG Rift, when I would want to use it, I would have to pull out the cameras, set up the cameras, run through Guardian setup because the cameras are in slightly different positions, set all of that up, go through that headache, and then I could play. I didn't want to have to do that anymore. The ease of setup of this thing is supposed to be the biggest selling point, right? At least for me, it is the biggest selling point. There might be a bigger selling point for you, but to me, that was the biggest selling point. And I think for a lot of people, the ease of setup is the biggest selling point. If 4 out of 6 days that I use this, I had to reset up the Guardian system, and I've had to do it multiple times since then as well. I'm just counting the first 6 days where I was using this for 6 days straight, not using another headset, playing every single day for multiple hours a day, trying to get a feel for it. Just counting those 6 days. If I had to do that, what was that? It's a fraction. I don't know. That's just way too much. It's way too many times that I would have to set up the Guardian system. And so the first time that I had to do it, it was for various different reasons. But the first time I had to do it, so this right here is the center of my play space. Right here, this is the center of my play space. The Guardian system that I set up the first time, the next time I went to go use it, it had rotated 45 degrees and it had moved to the left like 10 feet. So the edge of the play space was right here and the middle was way over there. And half of my play space was outside of the wall, outside of the house. That's not usable. So I had to scrap that and had to reset up the Guardian system. Another time that I had to do it, for some reason overnight, it just decided, oh, fuck this Guardian system. So I walk in the morning and I look at my computer and it's in the middle of room setup. Well, I didn't do this before I went to bed and nobody else comes in here. So unless I've got ghosts now, for some reason, the Oculus software just in the middle of the night decided, hey, we're going to run room setup. So you better reset up your Guardian again. And there was no way that I could back out of it. I couldn't not set it up. I couldn't be like, okay, well, obviously this is a mistake. No, it forced me to run through room setup again. And there were various reasons for the other two. I don't remember what they were off the top of my head, but I remember I took notes on how many times I had to do it, and I had to do it 4 times in those 6 days. And I think that that's huge because that's why the biggest reason why I got this was because I didn't want to have to do any of that anymore. So, I mean, if the great first time setup was where it would ended, that would have been great. However, those 6 days of issues are just frustrating. They're just frustrating. And this is sort of where I start to transition away from the headset. The headset, good headset. Like the headset, like the tracking. There's some questionable decisions around it, but I overall I like it. It's the overall Oculus experience that I'm not the biggest fan of. So, I mean, well, this kind of is. I don't know if this is a software issue or a hardware issue. So while using the headset, there were several instances of what I'm calling BLODs. And I'm not the only person to have experienced this. I've seen other reports of it. I don't know if it's been fixed since then, but in those 6 days, I had 2 instances of BLODs. And what BLODs are what I'm calling black lenses of death. And so what happens during a black lens of death is when you fire up a game, everything works like it's supposed to, right? So your controllers fire up, and if you're looking at the mirror window on your monitor and you move the headset around, you can see that the headset is tracking and it's talking to the PC. And as you do this motion on the mirror window, you see this motion being mirrored. But when you put the headset on, it's black. There's nothing. And it's not that an LCD is paneled on and you're getting that lit up, the screen is just black. No, it's the lenses are completely dead. They have no power. They're not turned on. And as far as I can tell, just like with a blue screen of death, the only way to fix it is to reboot the computer. So you've got everything set up. You want to play a game. You're logging into Beat Saber. You've got you got everything going, and then you put the headset on, and it's just black screen, and there's nothing. And then you have to shut down your computer, reboot it, and reset it up. And I haven't quite figured out what the trigger is for that. Like I said, it happened 2 times out of 6 days. So right now I'm at 2 black screen of deaths and 4 forced guardian resetups in 6 days. That's damn near a problem every day for the first week of using this headset. It's gotten better, but I also haven't been using it nearly as much. Almost not at all since then, to be perfectly honest. So twice in 6 days of gaming. So this is where we just go completely off the hardware. The Oculus software has also caused me other issues, and this is kind of where I start borderline ranting. I will rein it in. I won't do too much, but I'm just gonna explain some of the problems that I have encountered since installing the Oculus software. So one of the things that I really hate is whenever I open the Oculus software or I close the Oculus software, both of my monitors flicker off and flicker back on. And this is probably a combination of something Oculus is doing with the way that Windows handles displays, and it's resetting the displays, or it's doing something. But if I have my Windows set up usually in a very specific order, especially if I'm going to be recording, I've got my OBS is in one corner of the monitor. TeamViewer or my RDP into my Streambox is in another corner. I've got Stream Chat on half of one monitor. I've got the game in the corner of another monitor at 1080p. Like, I've got a very specific system that I use. There's a very specific way that my windows are set up, and when I open or close Oculus, it just fucks all of that. And I have to reset everything up. It's a tedious thing. It's a minor thing, but it's a frustrating thing, and I really hate it. I really hate it. So that's me venting on that. And again, that could just be Windows 10. A combination of Oculus and Windows 10. I had several other instances, however, of my monitor starting to flicker. So when I was doing something on my secondary monitor, so I start up Oculus software, and I'm doing some setup on my secondary monitor, my main monitor would start to flicker. And several times when it did that, it would just freeze. It would stop. And I don't know if this is tied to my previous complaint, but it only started happening since installing the Oculus software, and it only happens after I've started the Oculus software. Since not really using the Oculus software anymore, it stopped happening. So I can only deduce that it's something to do with the Oculus software, something to do with maybe the video drivers. I don't know. I don't know why it's happening, but it's also super frustrating, and generally a reboot fixes it. Just shutting everything down, turning it off and on again. Is it plugged in? That sort of troubleshooting just makes it go away, but it's super frustrating, and it makes me not want to use the headset. So I feel bad for anybody who just has to use this and doesn't have any other option. Yeah, so I mean, the hardware is good. The software and the general Oculus experience I could absolutely do without. It gives me nothing but problems, and it brings nothing to the table that Steam VR doesn't have an equal or better feature for. So if I could just plug this directly into Steam VR, I would use it so much more if I didn't have to use the Oculus software. So if somebody can get on that, that'd be great. But that's basically my gripes. For the most part, I like the headset. The biggest reason why I wouldn't use it would be the Oculus experience. And I've got a premium end headset as well that I would prefer to use. So, if for the price range, for the $400 price range, this is a good headset. This is absolutely a good headset. It is the best headset for inside-out tracking. All of the Windows mixed reality headsets that are doing it, I've hated all of them. And I have used the Samsung Odyssey. I wasn't super thrilled with it. It might have gotten better since I used it. It was like a year and a half ago at PAX, I think, or was it PAX or E3? Might have been a year ago at E3. I don't quite remember. I used it a while ago, so maybe through software it's gotten better since then. But from my experience, is hands down the best inside-out tracked headset, and that's one of the big reasons why you get it, is to not have the camera headache. There's still some issues with the inside-out tracking, but for the most part, hardware-wise, this is uh, a really decent headset for the price point. It is a reasonable successor to the original Rift, and since the original Rift can't be bought again, yeah, this is the replacement. Um, I wouldn't necessarily say that you should go out and upgrade to this if you've already got an OG Rift. There are a few questionable decisions, such as the refresh rate, the audio downgrade, the software IPD features. Several of the features that I mentioned earlier that weren't super stellar are questionable. They could have been better. They could have had the higher refresh rate to match the Odyssey. They could have matched the refresh rate of the Vive, or the resolution of the Vive Pro. They could have had the 90 hertz refresh rate. I'm not sure why they didn't. I don't know if they need to keep the performance at the same level of the original Rift, so offer a little bit more resolution at a lower frame rate, and it's a wash. So it doesn't require any more processing power. I don't really know what the decision behind that was, but it's a questionable one to me. I think that it's been how many years since the Rift launched? We can probably up the hardware requirements just a little bit, enough to get that standard premium resolution. I mean, I'm going off on a tangent here. This is not what I wanted to say at this point. It feels less of a clear cut upgrade, but it still edges out as a better buy for new VR users. So if you've got an OG Rift, you probably don't necessarily need to go out and buy this unless you absolutely hate your original camera setup and you absolutely want no cameras in your room. That's really the only reason to go out and grab one of these. Is this a better headset if you're looking to go buy a new headset? You don't have any headset right now. You have your heart set on a Rift. You've got the choice between a Rift or a Rift S. Go ahead and grab the Rift S. This is a marginally better headset than the original Rift. I don't think I mentioned field of view. Oculus claims that the field of view is slightly larger. I'm not entirely sold on that. It's roughly the same. It's not horrible. It's much better than it was when I was testing this out at PAX, and I don't know what it was about those headsets, but the field of view there was abysmal. But actually having it here, the field of view is decent. I think I meant to discuss that earlier and didn't, so another little sidetrack. So if you already got an OG Rift, I would wait on an actual Rift 2 or upgrade to one of the other premium headsets if you absolutely must upgrade immediately. The Index is coming. That I think is, I don't have any hard facts on that. I will be doing a review on that when mine comes in. But I have a feeling that's probably going to be the new King of the Hill, just because of that field of view. That field of view is disgusting. I have very high expectations for that. So if you absolutely need to upgrade, there's that. There's the Vive Pro. There's other options to immediately upgrade. Or again, if you absolutely must have a Rift, hold out for the Rift 2. You've already got a Rift. You don't necessarily need to spend $400 on this as well. If you want to buy one of the two, get the Quest for mobile, for wireless. If you absolutely need to buy one of this generation, I wouldn't even really call it a generation. This is more like the Rift to the Rift S is like the PlayStation is to the PlayStation Slim. It's their middle of the life cycle reimagining of the console. It might have a few souped up features, but for all intents and purposes, it's the same headset. if you've already got a Rift, you don't necessarily need to upgrade to this. I think that I've beat that horse to death sufficiently. That's basically all I have to say on the Rift. I'm fairly happy with the purchase as far as the hardware goes. Not super thrilled about the software, but I've already ranted about that more than enough, I think. I'm fairly certain you guys are tired of hearing me bitch about the Oculus software. I would really, really love to love the Oculus software because there's a lot of good games coming out. Stormlands is the top of my mind for what I want to be playing that is Rift exclusive. There's a few other games out there that are Rift exclusives that I'm going to be snatching up, and I will be using this headset for those games. So any Rift content that I do in the future will absolutely be on this over the original Rift. It's just easier. Even with all of the other frustrations, it's just easier to get set up than the OG Rift. So if you are new to VR and you have your heart set on a Rift, definitely pick this one up. This definitely gets a recommendation, unless you've already got a VR headset. If you've already got a VR headset, unless it's like a Windows Mixed Reality or a PSVR, wait for now. Wait for the next actual power up from Oculus. That I think is going to do it for my, I don't even know what I'm going to call this. Final thoughts on the Rift S. It's not really my final thoughts because I'm going to keep having thoughts as I use this more. Week one thoughts, even though it's like 3 weeks after I got it, 4 weeks after I got it. It's something ridiculous. I don't know. That's going to do it for this video on the Rift S and my thoughts on it as of this moment. How about that? We'll go with that. If you enjoyed this video, if it was helpful to you, please be sure to subscribe for more content like this. I usually do super long-winded videos where I rant and bitch and complain and get super colorful about shit that I'm passionate about. It's usually just my 2 cents on VR and nothing super meaningful, but go ahead and subscribe. It'll be fun. We'll have fun, I promise. Leave a like if this helped you. If there is anything else that you want to hit me up on, I have contact information down below. Join Discord down below. You can find cool merch in the merch store link down below and other ways to support the channel if you so desire. One of the viewers suggested a shirt, and sometime soon, within the next couple of weeks, I'll be having a limited run of those with his design. And then I'll probably take that idea and make a more permanent version of it. So be sure to tune into live streams where I'll announce like a limited 100 shirt run or something like that. I don't know. But that's going to do it for me. I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching. You guys have been awesome.